Hello, can you hear me? All right, thanks so much everybody for joining us. Hope everybody had a good lunch, good afternoon. Excited to be here to talk to you. I'm Etan Horowitz. I work at Google as the Global Innovation Programs Manager. So what that means is I work both with journalists and news organizations to help find ways for Google's AI tools to help them in their work. And I also work with our internal teams to work on those tools. So before we dive in, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself, about my background, to kind of help set the context a little bit. So, I've sort of been somebody that's kind of been present for a lot of the recent, trends and eras in journalism. I was a newspaper reporter in Florida to start my career. So, at the time, I helped that paper get into Twitter and social media and early blogging. And, when we thought the flip video camera was going to save news, if anybody remembers that one, so wrote a lot about technology. Also worked at CNN, kind of working on the TV side to sort of bring digital content to TV. So my second day there was the Haiti earthquake, and we were finding folks on Facebook to have them do live interviews on Skype at that time, and also spent some time on the mobile side of CNN, as mobile consumption, was sort of becoming the dominant way that people consume news. So I tell you all this just to sort of say that AI is very much, in line with a lot of these changes and trends. It is a tool, for you all as journalists and newsroom to use to really help kind of augment what you do, to strengthen the journalism and to reach new audiences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, run through a lot of different things today, and I'll leave a few minutes for questions at the end. But the goal is really to help inspire you with some of these tools, give you some practical examples for you to think about, and then go back and potentially try yourself. So kind of jumping in, and just to sort of tell you a little bit about Google, and our AI policies that we have. So basically, everything we do is grounded in, first, our mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And within that, as we work on AI products and tools, we have these three principles. We want to be bold in rapidly innovating and deploying AI, but in doing that, we want to be responsible. So we want to make sure that it meets the user needs, but also looking after, safeguarding user safety, security, and privacy. And finally, in everything we do, we want to collaborate with a broad range of partners, including journalists and the news organizations, to help make some of these, breakthroughs and really maximize the benefits of this technology, while empowering others to build on their own solutions. So the sort of three tools that I'm going to go through today are first Gemini, which is, you've probably heard of. It's our largest, the most capable model. It's also, the name for the Gemini apps that you interact with. It's the underlying models are Gemini models, and so it powers a lot of our tools. NotebookLM is really one of my favorite tools, and one that you may have heard about. You can sort of use it as a research assistant, to help you as you're doing your work, kind of go back and forth with. And then Pinpoint, I'm going to touch on very briefly, just to sort of show you some of the use cases of that as well. And again, just kind of as I said, the goal is not for you to remember every single thing, but really just to sort of think about some different ways that you might be able to use these in your newsroom, in your life. I often tell people, even working with AI tools, sometimes to sort of think about where to get started can be a little hard. And so encourage you to try things in your personal life, particularly if you haven't really done too much yet. So, for instance, when I was coming here and I stopped in Florence before and, asked Gemini to sort of help, I sort of said, this is how much time I have, this is when I'm arriving, this is when I'm leaving, help me plan an itinerary, and it was able to give some suggestions to use that. So definitely encourage you to give it a try in your personal life. So again, Gemini, just starting out, it's the personal assistant, lots of different things that it can do, available Gemini.google.com, also, in iOS and Android app. Available in more than 40 languages across 230 countries. No cost to use Gemini. That's another thing. Unless otherwise noted, everything I'm going to show you is available at no cost today. For you, and it's really great, Gemini to kind of get started with. So diving a little bit into some of the different things, I'm gonna give a very brief sort of overview, or maybe for some of you, just refresher kind of on prompting, which any AI tool you use, is something that you have to sort of keep in mind. So just, simply, it's an instruction or a question, to interact with a chatbot. And, again, I think as you use these tools more, you'll sort of get better at how you prompt, what you prompt. You'll see kind of what works. But just a couple of things to keep in mind, as you're thinking about this is, you can certainly start from scratch. As you go, you can refine. And so to sort of tell you a little bit about some of the different ingredients in a high-quality prompt. So things you want to consider are the persona, the role. So, what do you want, Gemini or the tool to do for you, to be for you? The tasks, the more specific you can be, the better. Who is the audience, that the content you're asking about is for? And then are there any constraints or any contexts? And then finally, the format. So I'll show you a little bit, just kind of a quick example of how you might put this into practice. So if you had something on the left, so somebody might say that sort of a good prompt might just be, suggest some exercises I can do at home or in a nearby park. It's good, like you'll get a response, kind of see how that goes. But if you were sort of looking at the framework that we looked at, and you might sort of chain different things together, like saying, act as an expert on, healthy aging. So that's that, persona. You're telling Gemini, hey, this is what I want you to act as. You're an expert on aging, and you focus on physical and mental well-being. And then sort of the task is like, I would like a list of ideas for staying active. So you're being specific. I'm a senior citizen. I'm not, as you can tell, but with limited mobility in this case. So that's, again, the audience of who you are. And then some of the context or restrictions of saying, hey, I prefer activities I can do at home or at a nearby park. And then finally that, include videos and easy to follow exercise routines targeted at people. So that's kind of an example of putting all of that together. You could do that all at once. You could kind of do that as you go through, or when you get a response and maybe it's not exactly what you wanted. So just some things to keep in mind. Also, just some phrases that are helpful to think about, so explain whatever topic to me, like I'm 5, or give me an analogy for this topic, or what are the key topics, to understand about this, pros and cons, create a plan with the top 5 areas. So, again, being as specific as possible is very helpful in prompting. And, even sometimes you can ask the Gemini, like, hey, what other information would you need to kind of help me with this? So just some things to keep in mind, again, on Gemini, a lot of AI tools, prompting is important. But again, as you do it more, you'll sort of kind of get the hang of it and see what works for you, kind of what your style is. So to tell you a little bit about just some features that are part of Gemini, and then I'm going to get into, some specific use cases. So on the right, when you ask a question in Gemini, and you get the response, you see the sort of, in the GIF, the little arrows that come up. So these are the sources of information where that answer was derived from. So you can expand them, and also has it at the bottom, which can help you if you're curious about, like, hey, where did it get that? Where did that information come from? The other thing that you can do is at the bottom of a response, you can click a double check or feature, and what then it will do is it will go through line by line, and it will search the web to sort of see if it could find similar content for everything in there, and it will show in green, if it found similar content like that, or sort of in that peach color if it didn't. The first sort of feature I'm going to show you is called deep research. Does anybody use this, deep research, in Gemini? A couple people. So the idea here is really, you can save a lot of time when you're researching something. So instead of, just doing a lot of, and I'm going to show you in a second what it looks like. Instead of doing a lot of browsing yourself, you can actually tell Gemini, and there's a drop down for deep research, like what you want to research. So, for example, again, in my personal life, I live in the U.S., in Philadelphia, in the state of Pennsylvania. We were doing some work on our basement, and I wanted to know about things like, well, how high do the ceilings have to be, and like what kind of, toilet are you allowed to put into the basement? And so instead of kind of doing all that myself, I used deep research, and I said, hey, create a report for me about the various codes and regulations governing basements in Pennsylvania. And so it was able to do that. What you'll see as I play this, the video here, is that it actually you prompt it, and it's, it tells you what it's going to do. Like, here's the plan on how to tackle it, and it says, here's what I'm going to research, and you can start it. It usually takes about 5 to 6 minutes. The other thing you can do is once you see how it plans to tackle that, you can actually edit it and say, no, actually go to this website or search this way. So, again, the idea is just to show you, how it's going to research for you. So really encourage you to give that a try. And I'm going to show you some specific examples of how you might use that. So some use cases for deep research would be, again, say you had, your news organization was interested in reaching new advertisers or particularly new, people for donations. So, maybe you covered a specific area, maybe you were in Italy and you wanted to know, hey, find all the local restaurants in Perugia and, create a list that includes the name of the restaurant, the address, the phone number, the email. You could do that. You could ask deep research to do that for you, to go out and create that list, which, again, would save you a lot of time. So, or if it's, again, just something you want to know about. Expertise, certainly, if you're covering something for the first time, as a reporter, you get assigned to something that you don't really know a lot about, don't really know where to start. You could have deep research go and create that for you. You can even take a deep, the other thing I forgot to mention, when you do deep research, and you could see it in there, you have it in the chat window, but you can also export it to a Google Doc, so you'll be able to save it. And then another potential one is monitoring of your competitors. So, maybe you're looking to launch a new product, a new newsletter, or a new, podcast, and you want to, like, hey, I want to launch a podcast about travel in Italy. What are the best podcasts out there? And then you could have deep research kind of do that for you. So it's a really, again, great tool to sort of help you in your sort of research and whatever you're looking to do. And as you could see, you can go in and kind of tweak the way that it will research. So that's one that I really encourage you to talk about. And, and competitive intel as well. Similar thing, just to kind of get an overview out there. So that's deep research. Again, available, no cost to use as part of Gemini. Available in lots of countries and languages. The next one are on image generation. So, obviously, like, there's a lot of talk around image generation and kind of what's going on there. Within Gemini, within the Gemini apps, like, you can ask it to generate images. And so an example that I used here, I said in my prompt, so I said, generate a photorealistic of an image of a woman working from home where the woman is facing her computer screen. So you could see I was specific about kind of what I wanted. A couple of thoughts here. You may have a situation where you are writing an article and you need sort of a stock photo like this, and maybe from other sources, what you want is not available. This is a way you could do that. All of the images and really anything that is created media from a Google AI tool are digitally watermarked with something called Synth ID, which identifies them as being AI generated. We would certainly encourage you as well to be transparent with your audience if you were to create an AI generated image and use it with your content. So that's just a basic example there of something you might generate if you had an article about working from home, something like that. The other thing you can do is you can also do some refining. So in this case, I took the same image and I said, using the same image, refine it to add a webcam to the top of the woman's computer and show the woman participating in a video call. And you can see between the two, same woman, just different kind of pose on that. So again, might be helpful for you if you're doing a report that may need something like that. Another one which I think again is also an interesting use is that sort of for more illustrations. So again, something like this, say you had an essay or a guest column about the human brain and information overload, and there's so much stuff. So what I wrote here was generate an abstract image of the brain with lots of information coming into it. In this case, I don't think anybody would mistake that, for an actual image of the brain, but same kind of principles. It's digitally watermarked with the Synth ID, and encourage you to identify it, be transparent with your audience. So the next tool as part of this is called GEMS. Has anybody used GEMS in here? Not okay. That's good. You'll sort of learn about it. So, what GEMS are, is if you think about going into Gemini and sort of asking it to do something, a task, and you may find that there is a task you're doing repeatedly, kind of, over and over, and instead of each time going in and prompting Gemini to do that, what you can do is create what is called a gem, which is sort of like a very specific kind of, bot that only does that repetitive task. So, and I'll show you what that looks like and some examples. You can see, in the GIF here, like things like a resume editor or a French tutor. So if you, or a quiz. And when you go to Gemini, we actually have some pre-built ones that are in here just to kind of show you how it works. So things like a career guide. So it says, unlock your career potential, get a detailed plan to refine your skills. The writing editor is one, again, that's pre-made that I'm going to show you. And the way that these gems work is that, so if I'm looking at here and I went to edit this writing editor one, what you can see is there's very detailed instructions here of like, assume a moderate level of writing ability, maintain a positive tone, here's instructions, like, ask what my goals are. So it's very, very detailed in the kind of writing editor that you're creating. The other thing you can do is if you see at the bottom where it says knowledge, you can actually add files to that. So again, some ideas around how you might use gems. You say you wanted to make a sort of a style guide gem or kind of writing editor. So you could train it on your news organization's style guides. You could give it examples of your writing style, articles, scripts, and then give it instructions on exactly, what you want kind of the output to be. Things like headlines and summaries are really useful. So if you have, one type of content or article, maybe a video or a television script, and you need to, or turn a digital, text article into a script for TV, you can have a gem that basically does that its whole purpose is to do that, or to create social media descriptions, or, teases, or, whatever it is, wherever you need to sort of like routinely take one type of content and transform it into another, you could use a gem for that. And then also like a research kind of idea. So, you could upload your archives to it. And so if you had, hey, what have we written about, Perugia, right? So if you upload your kind of archives to that, you'll have a gem that kind of can give you answers to that. So those are gems, again, available to use, no cost. You can use some of the pre-made ones or create your own. Very powerful for some of those repetitive tasks. Just another kind of quick example or two within Gemini. So Workspace, this is the one feature that costs money, but if your organization uses Google Workspace, like meaning your emails on Gmail, you use Docs, you have this built in already. You see the little Gemini icon. You'll see that inside of your apps. It's also, available if you did want to do it as a subscription, but very helpful, again, because instead of going to Gemini, it's sort of like Gemini comes to you, it kind of comes to wherever you are. And some of the ways you could use this, you could see like within Google Drive, you have that side panel and you can ask questions about, hey, what have we written on X, or, show me all my meetings with this person, or, that kind of thing. So it's built right in. If you are not using Workspace, you can, in Gemini, connect it to like your Gmail and get those responses there. But sort of the difference is you would do that in Gemini. So that's Gemini and some of the features in that. What I'm going to show you now, NotebookLM, which again I'm a really big fan of this in particular. How many people have used NotebookLM? Tried it? Okay, so some more folks there. That's great. You probably heard about it. Sort of kind of went viral because it has an ability to take anything and make it into a podcast or an audio overview. Where it sort of gained some traction once this tool came out. What is it? What is NotebookLM? So again, it's a research and writing tool designed to help you find, summarize, and gain insights faster. On the right is what it looks like when you first get to NotebookLM. And talking a little bit about some of the key difference. So this is a key difference. So if you think about Gemini, right, and Gemini it's a large language model. It's trained on publicly available information on the web. Whenever you ask it something, it's kind of going out and searching through everything. What's really different about NotebookLM is it's what's known as being source grounded. So what that means is that NotebookLM is only going to respond or provide answers based off of what you upload to it. And that's really powerful for journalists, frankly, for a lot of people as well, because you can sort of be sure that it's answering on your own documents. The other thing that it does, which I will show you, is that it has very handy inline citations. So whenever it responds, you'll see sort of a number and you can kind of see where it comes from. Also great is that, again, once you upload a document to it, you immediately get a summary that sort of tells you what it's about, and you get some suggested questions, which, I know sometimes with these AI tools, it can be a little bit like, hey, I don't know what to ask, I don't know where to start, but in this, just upon uploading something, anything, a document, a PDF, it will sort of summarize it and kind of give you, some direction of where you might want to go next. It's multimodal and multilingual. Multimodal meaning that you can sort of input different modes of content. So you might upload, an audio transcript of an interview you did, and then you can have output something in text, or you can, take images and then generate, text from that or audio from that. Multilingual in that you can sort of mix different languages. So you could, upload a PDF or a document in Italian, ask questions about it in English as well. And again, also it's available, in all the places where Gemini is available. It's, more than 100 languages. And then also, and this is important at the bottom, like, your personal data is not used to train NotebookLM, so it is private, in that sense. So some of the key features, kind of diving in a little bit, I'm going to kind of walk you through the steps of how you use NotebookLM, and these are sort of the 4 steps. So in uploading, documents, files, anything relevant to what you're working on, then you're going to review those insights. the collaboration kind of with that assistant, and then the creation. So I'm going to go through each of these, and you're going to see with kind of different examples, kind of how these come into play. So when you first log on to NotebookLM, you'll get a screen like this asking you to upload your sources. And you see you have some different options, of Google Docs, slides, PDFs, text and markdown files, web URLs, public YouTube videos, and this is a very helpful one as well, particularly for long YouTube videos. Say you had a 6-hour parliament, hearing, right? You could upload that and be able to have it summarized very easily. Then you can see some of the file space limits there. Again, this is the version available at no cost to you. So everything here I'm showing you. And then once you, again, some of the ideas, so what might you use this for? So think about, I was, as you saw, I was a reporter, 20 years ago, local reporter, and I remember having to go get these, 100-page doc, from the local city council and sort of look through it and be like, okay, what are they going to talk about? Are there any stories here? Are there any information? So that would be if I were doing that today, I would basically take that and I would upload it to NotebookLM. And I would, and you'll see some ways you could do that, for story ideas, budgets, financial budgets, your own notes, interview transcripts, again, and just keeping in mind that source grounded. So it's only going to respond based off of what you're asking it. Previous coverage, like I said as well. Once you upload some documents, this is where you see those insights. So for the next couple of slides, the example I have here is we use some interview transcripts from NASA, from the space program in the US, which were interviews with astronauts. And you can see there's 7 files. And upon just uploading them, you get a really great summary. But then on the bottom, you also get some of the suggested questions. So how did the Apollo program's culture shape its successes? Again, so if it's you don't exactly know where to start, those suggested questions are really helpful to kind of get you moving. And then here, this collaboration is where I think it's really gets powerful. So, once you've got your documents uploaded, and you can see, in this GIF, what it's showing here. So a notebook is like a collection of files. So you might have one for if you're working on a particular story or maybe a coverage area. In this case, in the GIF, it's a notebook created for a literature class that's uploaded source material. And you see they're asking what are the major themes, of Ulysses, the James Joyce novel. You get the answer, but that number 1 that you click on, it jumps you right to where that came from. So that's really powerful and important. You can see right there that sort of it will expand and show it to you. Really helpful during the reporting process. The other thing you can do is select and deselect documents and only ask questions about certain ones. Then the next part of it, kind of moving through, is the sort of creation of content types. So this is where that sort of deep dive podcast kind of became popular. What I often tell people, again, sort of the idea of in your personal life is if you need a little boost or kind of pick me up in your day, what you could do is take your CV or your resume, upload it to NotebookLM, click the audio overview button, and it will generate a podcast of 2 hosts talking about you, about your background, your professional experience. So kind of a nice thing to sort of see how it works, but also, again, should make you feel good if you need a little pick-me-up. So that's one that I always suggest trying. The other thing, too, beyond the audio overviews is creation of things like study guides or timelines, that kind of thing. I'm going to show you in a minute some specific examples. Again, now you understand the functionality of the upload, the insights, the sort of back and forth, and then the creation. So again, how might you as journalists, as news organizations, actually use this tool? So the first category around research and reporting. Again, so this is what I was saying earlier around story ideas. So again, using the same NASA files, what I did was I asked NotebookLM, please suggest 3 story ideas for a journalist to write based off of these interviews. And if you remember back to the prompting, I'm sort of using some of those principles of like, what is the task, story ideas, who is the audience, journalists, constraints, I only want 3, that kind of thing. Same principle applies here, but again, it's only gonna answer based off of what I uploaded, whereas if I put that prompt into Gemini, it would go search through everything that it has. And again, for that example of a meeting agenda, maybe you couldn't get to the meeting and you have a transcript of it, or something like an earnings call or a meeting, or even your own notes, right? Like maybe you just did a bunch of interviews and you're not sure kind of where to go. You could upload your interviews and say, hey, suggest some story ideas based off of my notes. That kind of thing, again, sort of for that thought partner for you as you're doing your research and reporting. And then also sort of thinking through it. I mean, this is one that I think, again, back to when I was a local reporter, if I had been asked to cover a new town, coverage area, what I would have done was like furiously read through all the previous coverage, maybe talked to the previous reporter, looked at some websites, and certainly you can and still should do all of that, but also, to sort of speed things up a little bit, like you could essentially say, like say you were covering, I don't know, transportation or the government, you could go and take, a couple months worth of articles from your news organization on that topic, upload them, maybe some source lists, maybe some other relevant, and then actually ask NotebookLM, like, hey, please generate a guide or a memo for a new reporter who's going to be covering, the town of Perugia, right? And it will do that. I've tried it. It works very well. Again, only answering based off of what you've given it. Understanding complex topics, this I think is really at the core of this tool. And again, as you think about, Gemini and NotebookLM are broadly available, general purpose tools that have applications, uses for journalists. But this one really, like for everybody. So say, particularly on deadline, you had to cover something that you weren't familiar with. Maybe there's a new report released by the government or scientific research, again, or you got some transcripts and you just really need to become an expert quickly. You can just upload that and sort of ask NotebookLM to help you understand it. Again, one of the things I often do here, I think even things like you can ask it to, create a table for you. And I've done things like, hey, take these interviews and create a table of the points made and have a column for this, a column for, so you can be that specific and it will do it for you. I think also just thinking about writing, and so verification. So this one was interesting as well because, when you're in your process of writing an article, and again, using the NASA files. So what I did here, I asked a very specific question. So again, it has all my source material, those 7 NASA interviews, and I said, I'm interested in the emotional and interpersonal lives of the astronauts. Give me a detailed overview of all of the sections of these transcripts that might be useful for exploring those themes. Include key quotes as well. And as you can see, like, it did that. It says, here's an overview of the sections, including quotes, competition and camaraderie, and then it kind of summarizes, has the citation, gives an actual quote, from there with the citation. So this would be useful, particularly, if you were covering something, whether it was a sports match or something like that. You went out, you used an audio recorder to get your interviews, you uploaded it to NotebookLM, and then you wanted to know, like, hey, find all of the quotes where players talked about the second half or where this. And so again, what it's doing is it's your material, your notes, not going out publicly, but kind of helping you to quickly kind of go through that and find things to help in your process. So that one I think is really interesting. And then also on the writing one, so what's I think is cool about this as well is that you can sort of use it as a one-stop shop for a lot of your process. So you have your sources, so say you make a notebook for one particular story, and you have your sources, everything that you've used, uploaded. In the middle, you have your, kind of back and forth questions, and then there actually has a word processor in there, so you could write your story in there. So instead of having to go to, different tabs and all that, you can sort of have everything in one place. Another thing you can do along those lines is like, even if you don't write your article in NotebookLM, what you could do is you could take a draft of your article and take all of the sources you use to write your article, upload them all in NotebookLM, and say, hey, review this article draft, or like fact check it, against these sources. And what it will do is it will go through line by line, and every claim that's in there, like, okay, you said 20% job increase, like, here's where we found that. You said, 100 new jobs added, here's where we found that. And then it would actually tell you, we couldn't find a reference to this, so like it will tell you that. It's not a fact check in like the third party fact checking sense, but just in terms of, double checking what you've written against the source material. Okay, getting to the podcasts, again, just to sort of give you a flavor of what this is like. What I did, again, this is what made it go viral, and kind of to show you how it works, what I did was I took the website, just the URL of this festival, of IJF, of all the sessions. I uploaded it to NotebookLM, and I clicked the audio overview button. That's all I did. It made about a 25-minute podcast. I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, but I will play the first few minutes just to show you, and we'll have the audio here, kind of what that sounds like, how it works.
All right, welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works. You give us the reading list,
yeah,
and we get to do the fun part and really pull out the interesting stuff. And this time around, we're taking a look at the program 2025 from the International Journalism Festival.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah, it's kind of a who's who of
Absolutely.
the folks in the news business getting together every year in Perugia. So
Yep.
this is like our cheat sheet to figure out what they're all talking about.
Yeah, kind of a sneak peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
What's on the minds of the people who shape the news?
Absolutely. And this one runs Wednesday the 9th to Sunday the 13th.
A lot to cover.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, there are so
Yeah.
many sessions. I think you and I were both kind of
Oh yeah.
overwhelmed just looking at the sheer volume of stuff.
Well, when I first started looking at it,
Yeah.
the thing that really jumped out at me was just how much is focused on tech. And especially AI. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
it's
Yeah.
everywhere you look,
It really is. It's like every other session title
Yeah.
has got AI in it in some way.
Exactly. And I think what's interesting is it's not just, future gazing anymore.
Right.
This is like AI is here, it's happening now,
Yeah.
and people are wrestling with what it means.
So there you go. I think it sounds pretty realistic. Again, all I did was paste the website and hit that AI overview button. Pretty cool technology as well. Yeah. So good question. So right now, it is only available, the audio overview, in English, but I know that is a top request of the team to have it in other languages. So they are working on that, and so hopefully soon. Just a couple more things. So again, in the content creation bucket, so news quiz, I know is something a lot of news organizations do. Probably create them yourself manually. You could take a week's worth of your top stories and ask NotebookLM to generate a quiz. And again, I know I'm saying this a lot, it's only using those articles, so the quiz is going to be based on those articles, and you could say, it should have multiple choice of 4 questions or 5 questions, or make the quiz for a younger audience, that sort of thing. FAQs and timelines. So this is also a big one. I know if you have something that you've been covering for a long time, a trial or government legislation, and you may want to have an FAQ or a timeline, you could upload of all that coverage previously and just ask it to make a timeline or an FAQ, and sort of saving you that. Jumping to audience and revenue. So again, we a lot of use cases around editorial, but also for the business side here, which is important. So I think audience insights. So understanding your audience. What I did to kind of show how this works is that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Reuters Institute Digital News Report. It's a 168-page document. So what I did was I uploaded it to NotebookLM, and I said, using the uploaded report, please create 3 personas that represent the needs and desires of today's news consumers with a maximum of 3 bullet points for each persona. I did just that, 3, it met my restrictions, gave them names, knowledge seeker, perspective explorer, gave sort of relevant information and the sources. You could certainly do this with your own audience research and insights. Maybe you've got a survey of your audience. Maybe you've commissioned your own research, and you really want to understand, like, okay, based off of this research, how do we reach these people? Help us devise some strategies to reach people. That's, again, sort of a really good use case. And then just, 2 more. So targeted email. So if you think about, way back with the deep research example that we started with, if you were to do that, hey, generate a list of advertisers, restaurants in Perugia, and include their names and emails and all that kind of thing, you could use NotebookLM to create some emails, right? And again, you tell it, you could upload information about your news organization, about your audience, maybe your mission statement, and use it to solicit, to create an email, maybe for advertisers, maybe for donors, that kind of thing. And then finally, branded content as well. If you do that type of thing, you might upload previous examples, and ask it to sort of create a new article. So NotebookLM, and then the very last thing I'm going to touch on briefly, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions, is Pinpoint. So how many people are familiar with Pinpoint? Okay, good number in here. But just very briefly, Pinpoint so if you think about, as I said, Gemini, NotebookLM, general audience tools that have usage for journalists and news. Pinpoint built specifically for journalists and researchers, not available to the general public. You have to apply and fill out a form and say that you are a journalist. The team that works on it, and you'll hear in a minute, there's a whole session on Pinpoint tomorrow, which I'll show you the details for. It's really kind of a power user tool, particularly for investigative reporting. It's been used to win Pulitzer Prize investigations. And so some of the differences, in terms of, like, again, investigative reporting, things where you have thousands and thousands of documents that you're trying to go through. It also, archives, that kind of thing. Similar in terms of the process, but there is more, you'll see in a second, more file types. And again, this is just to sort of show you a little bit around Pinpoint. There's generative AI features. Once you upload information, it labels people and places for it. And also things like if you have a bunch of paper PDFs or scanned PDFs that you want to turn into a spreadsheet, you can actually use Pinpoint to kind of annotate that. Again, the session tomorrow, I'll show you in a second, is going to have a lot on Pinpoint. The file types that are supported. So, if you think about, like, for me, there's NotebookLM, and, with Pinpoint, I really see Pinpoint as kind of a power user tool, again, particularly for investigative reporters, for where you really have lots and lots of documents. You have a little bit broader file type that can be uploaded to Pinpoint. Also, raw video files, that sort of thing. So similar there, but again, just to show you tomorrow, so my colleagues who are in the back, Megan and Michal, are doing a session tomorrow morning. The entire session is on Pinpoint. Really encourage you to check it out. Great tool that's been around for a few years, and again, built exclusively for journalists and researchers. So with that, we have a survey here, and the other thing I want to mention as well, is, a lot of these tools are new, and for me, I'm, in my role, I'm really looking for use cases, so people that have used them. So if as a result of this, you go back and you use Gemini or Notebook or Pinpoint, we'd really like to know about it. So, please reach out to us. You can, contact me on LinkedIn or at this email. And with that, I thank you, and we'll take some questions.
May I ask you to stand up while talking?
Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. My name is Jimmy Saleh. I work for the BBC World Service, producing content in Nigeria. And I'm also interested in using AI to solve problems in Africa, especially in local languages, as that is an evolving field. Having said that, looking at what you used, the notebook to present, especially the picture of that woman, imagine that picture. I'm heavy on ethics and potential legal landmines when it comes to the use of AI to generate all these images and texts, because most newsrooms are only just beginning to use these, and then policies are evolving and all that. One question, for example, if that image bears a striking resemblance to someone next door, I know it's possible to say this image was used to generate in AI and all that, and then you end up in court. What might your defense be?
I mean, if what, as a news organization, is that your question?
Yeah, for example, yeah, as a news organization.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really answer that as I'm not a lawyer. I definitely encourage you to look at a lot of the privacy policies and terms of services that sort of, talk about the rights that are on there. I know that anything generated has pretty broad usage rights, but I can't really speak about, potential litigation on that. But thanks. And the other questions? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Marielle from the Telegraaf in Holland. I was wondering, journalists are always looking for questions and information they don't know yet, or the question they don't know that they have to ask, not always, but most of the time. How do you have advice to read between all the sentences to get information they don't know yet, and they don't know if they are in all the documentation?
Sorry, say that again. You wanted like how advice on knowing what to ask of an AI tool? Or?
No, actually, if you're looking for information, you don't know if it's in the documentation yet.
Okay.
How
yeah.
can you write? How can you read between all the information to get the most important information, actually?
Okay. I think I just said a couple things, and tell me if I'm answering this like. Wait. There is a new feature in Notebook which actually didn't show, but actually would allow you to discover some additional sources out there. So if you uploaded all your information and you were sort of curious, like, hey, is there anything out here that I'm missing? Is there other documents? It would actually sort of, with your permission, go and search the web. Is that what you're in?
No,
oh, sorry.
If you are a political journalist, you're looking for something that is between all the woolly language of the politicians. How can you let NotebookLM help you to find that information?
Okay. I mean, I would just ask it. I mean, I think things like asking, hey, is there something I'm missing here? Or, and also the more you upload, like I've heard examples where somebody talked about if they were a columnist, opinion columnist, and they uploaded a bunch of their previous columns, and they sort of asked NotebookLM, like, hey, based on what you know about me, like, what would I say about this or other styles? So that might be one way to do it. I don't know if I'm still not answering, but happy to chat more afterwards about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other question? Yeah. 1 minute.
Hi. Thank you. I'll be quick. I live in Denmark, so often I have to go through Danish data, Danish language, which is a smaller language, and I've had issues in the past with like other AI-based apps in terms of comprehension of Danish or really like synthesizing information. Do you have some like data available or some results that show that actually your products are also like equally as accurate with smaller languages just as they are in English? Because you said that you can mix languages, but I'm a bit like, how good is it? You know?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and I know language and translation is a big use case. I mean, I can't necessarily point to any studies, and would love to hear the feedback, but that is definitely an area that's improving all the time. And something like potentially the GEMS example, where you could sort of train it yourself so that instead of just using whatever kind of the out-of-the-box translation is, if you notice, like if you built a Danish translation gem where you're like, hey, I'm going to take this, and you notice that, hey, it's always getting this nuance wrong, or that, you could actually go in and kind of say, you know, okay, when you see this, do this, so you could set some rules. But, you know, I think with translation, definitely experimenting and you know, seeing kind of what works the best. But thank you. Good. All right. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.